Today we're going to check the drop-down element. The drop-down element, much like a checkbox, a switch, or a radio group, is an element that presents the user with choices. Let me pick it up. You can select it by pressing D or picking it from the toolbar. By default, it displays a label when there is no other choice selected, and you can use the property inspector to add options. So for example, let's create a drop-down for favorite fruit. I'm just adding some options here. And you can see that for each option, you can have a label and a value. The label is what's presented to the user. The value is how your app will see it. This is a good way, for example, to have a human readable thing on the label and something that makes sense on a database query on the value. Let me show how it works. You click the triangle there and you are presented with the options. You can select an option. The option is selected. The other option choosing elements that we shown, like the checkbox, let me pick a checkbox here, the switch, and the radio group. They all put the choice into the value property. So if I click this here, the value for this element is now true. If I click this, the value for this element is now false. And if I click here, the value for this element is now option 2. So you would think that the drop-down is the same, but it's not. Let me show you. I'm just gonna add a button here to check the drop-down value. There. So I'm gonna go into low code, create a mouse click, and we are gonna pick that and set a variable with the value, and then display it to the user. So the element is the drop-down, and the property is not value. You have two properties to choose from: last selected text and last selected value. The first one is the label that was selected, and the second one, the value. Usually you want the value. Notice that we haven't filled the value in the property inspector. It's all blank. In that case, the label and the value are the same value. Sounds tricky, right? Let me show you. Just placing this on a variable called temp. And let's display it to the user. Switching into play mode, selecting fruit, and you can see the value here. So you can use it much like you use the other options presented. For example, a radio group will have all the options on display at the same time, while a drop-down is more compact. So you can have more options and using like less screen real estate. Another cool thing that the drop-down is able to do is that it has a low-code interface. So you can configure it to pick options from a database table. So here I have this database table called favorite fruits, and they have a name. Let me show you. So they are here, just a list of fruits, and for each of them you have an ID, which is the unique ID that identifies the record. So I can go on the no-code interface and connect it to that table, select name as the label, and the ID as the value. If I do that and try the same thing we are doing, you can see that all the options now are present and coming from the database table, and that the value is now the record ID. If you're trying to think when that's useful, imagine, for example, that you're building a task manager and you have a form that edits a task. Inside that form, you can have a drop-down that picks a list of projects from a projects table, not from the task table, so that you can associate a task with a project, for example. And then you have a key on the task table called project, and you write the ID from a record of the project table into that key. On the forms video, that becomes more clear. But that's just to say that this is a good way, a good element to use when you're editing a record and you want data from another table into that record. A drop-down is a prime element to use in that case. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning more about drop-downs. If you have any doubt, reach out to me at forums.apply.io and check out the other videos, especially the form one.